Okay. So is somebody going to introduce or I just hello? Okay. Hey, good evening, good morning, everyone, depending upon where you are. I am AB Vijay Kumar. I have been with IBM for more than 20 years. I'm an IBM Distinguished Engineer and a Master Inventor. I have around 54 patents in my name. It's really exciting to be presenting in this forum. First of all, thanks to NPTEL team for inviting me to talk about this topic. I've been told not to get too deep into the technology, but I'll try my best not to get into it, but more relating in terms of how the cloud technologies that we have having at this point, the complete ecosystem that is building around, how is it going to, how it's already fueling the digital reinvention. So this will be around 40 to 45 minutes, and I'll be more than happy to take questions after that. So it is divided into two sections if you really look at it the way I wanted to present today. The first part of the session is about what do we mean by digital transformation and digital reinvention, how IBM defines digital reinvention, and it is very much aligned to what is happening in the market. It could be IBM, it could be non-IBM, doesn't matter, but I'm sure you are already seeing it, and I'll give a lot of examples around that. And then I'll go to the back end of how this digital reinvention is being able to we are able to do this with the plethora of cloud technologies coming together, right? So let me quickly jump. So IBM does this CXO studies. So we go to thousands of CXOs, CEOs, and we collect all of this information about what do the CEOs think are the problems, the key problems that they are facing, how do they see the future of their company, and what do they think are the hurdles that they need to cross, and what are the critical three things that is bothering them. And based on this study, basically what came out is the first and foremost question is my strategy ambitious enough? Most of the CEOs, they feel that they are kind of insecure in terms of they are not sure if the strategy that they have put together is it ambitious enough. The main reason behind this is because of the changes in the business models, right? So the digital companies are taking over. I'll give some examples, like for example Uber, which is not at all a travel transportation company, has taken over, which is more a digital company, has taken over the travel and transportation. Similarly, you have Airbnb, which is a digital company which has taken over the complete hospitality business. And that is how things are changing, right? So the pure plays like automotive companies, they are asking this question in terms of, okay, I have set my strategy to build this new car, but I don't know if that is ambitious enough. Is there anything else I can do? Like, for example, Tesla has taken over the market, with bringing in a lot of innovation. If you really look at it, it is more of a battery company, right? And if you look at the differentiation that people are bringing in is all more towards the innovation is more towards the digital and IT and the new ways of doing this business models, new ways of consuming these products, right? So it's not just about buying a car anymore, but what other services do I get along with the car, and how do I retain my customers after I sell the car? So that is the kind of thought process that is going in CEO's mind. And because of that, what is really happening is all CEOs are not very sure that are they doing the right thing in terms of embracing the digital? Are they working with the right kind of ecosystem vendors who can give a differentiated value proposition for their business? The second important question is, okay, even if it is ambitious enough, am I running as fast as I should? Because the competition is neck break. If you look at, again, I keep going back to automotive because that's the field in which I worked more than 8 years in my career. If you look at automotive, uh, there used to be one or two major companies, right? Or what we used to call the big three, or the three companies that we used to have. But now, if you look at it, it's very, very emerging. You find a lot of new players in the game, and it's a lot more outside manufacturing. If you really look at it, there is always somebody new who is coming up with a new business model, and they are executing it much faster. They're going to the market much faster. If they think of an idea, they are able to quickly jump into execution, right? So again, these are very important points I want you to remember, because I'm going to connect this back to how cloud is helping all of these companies in the background. And the third key question that comes out of this CEO study that we have done is, okay, are the people that are going to work for me, have I transformed them? Are these the skills that I really need for the new age, right? So the skills doesn't just have to be to do with a particular technology, but it's the culture. I mean, do I have the culture of what we call the agile culture? Do I have the overall culture of doing things much faster, executing things much faster? Do I have the mindset of minimum viable products? Do I have the mindset of failing fast and things like that, right? So that requires a totally different kind of a culture, and I will talk a little bit more as I go along. Now, based on these three, if you really look at it, right, the other key trends. So one is these three questions, but then the other key trend, if you look at, I mean, let me take a step back, right? 6 years back, the kind of projects, not even 6 years, 10 years plus back, the kind of projects I was working on was all about digitalization. It's about, somebody is doing it manually, somebody doing it in maybe an Excel sheet or writing it down on a book. Now I am digitalizing it. I'm moving all the data that is there in discrete systems and putting it into some kind of a database. And this is the age where we had a lot of client server applications, where we had data processing applications. The whole idea of data processing applications was to capture the data in digital form, right? But then over a period of time, what we realized is we captured enough data. Now, can this data that I have be used to transform my business? That's where all the analytics came in, right? So that's where we started looking at, how do I take this data, look for patterns? For example, how are people buying the products? Now that I have the complete history of a particular customer, can I target a customer? Can I target do more and more about what we call the targeted marketing and things like that? So that's where we started looking about. We started building applications which have this business analytics, business optimization. So one is the overall prediction of things, and the other thing is, how do I optimize my business? How do I improve my supply chain with the kind of data that is coming in and all that, right? And then if the third phase is what we believe is the digital reinvention, and it's already happening, where I am asking this question to myself, saying, am I doing the right thing with my current business, or should I expand into totally new business? A great example of this is one of the workshops that I ran with one of the largest luxury segment car manufacturers. This is some 6 years back, where I was invited into a workshop hosted by the CTO of that particular company. And the question that was asked to us in that workshop, it's a 2-day workshop that we did, was, okay, I build cars, but forget that I build cars. What else can I do with the kind of knowledge and the domain that I have, right? And the kind of ideas that came out from there was totally innovative, right? And that is what is really happening. So one of the ideas is, for example, okay, you are in the business of making the car and selling the car, right? Now, how can you retain the customer after you sell the car? So one is, we started talking about those telematics, infotainment, where you keep paying every month some fee to get a free entertainment on your car, or few things like, how do you do remote diagnosis, things like that. And then all of a sudden, it occurred to the CTO saying, hey, can I now tie up with the rental cars and provide what we call the virtual garage? The idea of virtual garage is, you don't buy a car, you go to a website, you say, hey, I want this cars for this year. I would like to have something like limousine or a luxury car for these dates because it's my wedding anniversary or a family event or something. And for these events where I'm going on a long drive, let's say with a large family, I need more like an MUV kind of a model, right? So I'm not really buying the car. I'm subscribing to the car service and the car gets dropped near my doorstep and I use that. And then there was another model that we discussed in terms of how do I integrate this model to intermodal transfer, what we call, right? So for example, I get out of this, I'm sure, and this is already happening, right? You can see when you get out of your office, you can just swipe a phone on a particular cycle or a motorbike, take the motorbike, drop it anywhere you want and go, right? So the same idea came some 10 years back when we were in that, 6 years back when we were in that workshop where we said, okay, why can't we do that for cars? And I think it's more than 6 years, it's around 10 years, right? So that is digital reinvention, where you're reinventing yourself in terms of living away from the core business. What else can I do with the kind of digital data? And this, if you really look at it, this is possible because of the data that is there, because of the systems that are built around it, and all of it is IT, right? So the IT is really transforming the way I can come up with the new business models. If you look at it, Uber is just pure IT company. Google is pure IT company. You look at Airbnb, Alibaba, all of them are pure IT companies. But look at the way they've transformed the whole business, right? So the pure plays, which we call, are now competing with these digital companies. So they are moving more and more very, very rapidly into what we call the reinventing themselves with digital, right? So that is what we really mean by digital reinvention. Banking, for example, right? So you take, for example, our local bank, State Bank of India, how it has transformed in the last, I would say, 4 to 5 years, right? So we used to go to a State Bank. My father is a State Bank of India customer, and he had to go those days to the branch to pick up all the things, right? He used to have a physical passbook. He used to write down. He used to take a printout on the physical passbook on his balance. If he has to check the balance, he has to call or he has to go there. If you have to give us check, you have to go there and things like that. To what you have, I don't know how many of you have used Yono, is amazing, right? So Yono is one app with which you don't just do banking, you can do insurance, you can do retail, everything else, right? And there's a lot of digital reinvention that State Bank of India has gone through to reach this particular milestone, right? So they are tied up with various vendors, retail vendors. They are tied up with various, utility companies to provide one single pane service for all of these things. And all this is possible because of the digital that we have, right? I'll not dwell too much into this, but if you look at it, basically the key message here is because of the kind of data that I have, because of the integrations in the systems, because I have moved 100% or completely onto an IT platform, all my business processes are done on the IT platform. There's a lot more I can do with the kind of systems that I have. I talked about Uber, right? They don't own even a single car, but they are one of the largest, I would say, travel transportation companies. Facebook, right? One of the largest social content providers in the world, right? Similarly, Alibaba, they don't have any inventory. Same thing with Amazon, right? But they are one of the largest sellers of products. Airbnb, we talked about it, right? So they don't own even a single property, but they basically are the go-to for most of the bread and breakfast or any stays that you want to do. Similarly, Skype is a completely digital company now. It's Microsoft, but it kind of challenged. And same is WhatsApp, for example, right? So how many of you started using WhatsApp calls or WhatsApp video calls than telephone, right? So how many of you are really using telephone these days? Even cell phone calls we don't make. We prefer doing more of WhatsApp calls because it's easy for me to do a video and drag four more people into a group chat or a group call and things like that, right? So I think I talked quite a bit about this, right? I just want to show you one quick picture of automotive industry since I talked about automotive so far. what used to be the traditional automotive value chain is you used to have tier 2 suppliers, tier 1 suppliers, and then a manufacturer and a dealer and a, where you buy the car. So this was a very simple traditional value chain. The tier 2 suppliers build the parts, give it to the tier 1 supplier who will assemble and build more parts, and then give it to the manufacturers who will then make it a full car, give it to dealers, and then sell. Of course, there are a lot of other people in the middle, but these are the key value chain providers. If you look at this landscape, right, these are the logos. Typically, we are so used to these logos, Bosch, Honeywell. But if you look at the landscape, how it has transformed now, you will see more and more digital companies getting in. There is Google driverless, there is Tesla. On the other side, you have Uber, you have Zipcars. You look at the overall ecosystem, so it has moved from what we call the traditional value chain. It was more like left to right, to a bunch of companies which are working together to provide what we call the value added service or value proposed, and a new proposal of business and new business model that is coming together. Yeah. So let me walk you through two examples of where IBM has done this, and then I will that will make it kind of very clear, right? So a coffee, right? When you go buy a coffee, right? It's a very simple thing. You just go buy a coffee. But if you think about it, anybody like Starbucks or Barista, or even for that matter, Coffee Day, right? They have a huge supply chain behind it. So if you say this particular cappuccino of this particular variety actually the beans come all the way from Indonesia. Some beans come from, let's say Coorg, or some come from Brazil and things like that, right? And they are very, very specifically built for that particular company. And now it's not like, I just go order a coffee and they just give it to me, right? So they should have done a complete planning of that in terms of how do you get the bean, and they have that overall quality practice in terms of getting the bean by this particular day. It has to be fried to this much before it can be powdered and made a coffee, right? So all that has to fall in place. To have all of that falling in place, obviously, if I am setting up shops, like, I don't know how many of you have seen Starbucks outside India. In India, it's not that many shops, but if you go outside India, you will find, like, every corner there are like one or two Starbucks. Then all of a sudden you will see one new Starbucks opened, just like that, right? Now, where are they getting this stock? How are they planning this overall stock of beans and whatever else that they need, right? So IBM worked with one of the largest coffee companies, right, in terms of using analytics, right? So now I talked about data, right? Now there is enough data for me to understand. Now I'm not just talking about the data that I have in my system, but legally I have access to various other data in terms of your preferences, in terms of your trends, right? In terms of what is the weather, what is the overall news. There's a lot of data that is available in the social media. When I say social media, it's not just your Facebook, right? It's much more than that, right? Now, using that, can I build a learning model? And we build the predictive model, which basically predicts in this particular location during this kind of a weather, these are the kind of coffees that are sold, right? And we kind of came up with a pattern in terms of how people drink coffee in a particular location. Some people in cold countries or cold places, when it is raining, they have a different preference and all that. And we know from the weather company, what kind of predictions are there in terms of weather. So can I use that data to do the overall supply chain planning? And that's what exactly we did. And then we also went one step ahead in terms of understanding real time, what is the typical pattern. And if you sign up for this loyalty, obviously, you'll have to sign up and agree for sharing some of your information. And once you share that, we know exactly what you would prefer on a particular day and what time you will come to pick up what coffee, right? So to that level, we are able to predict with the kind of data. And what this is really helping end of the day is the user experience. When I walk in, I have my coffee, I know exactly what kind of coffee I build. And, Of course, there is also sales on the other side. I'm able to sell things which normally if I buy coffee, I go along with that with a cookie, right? So I know, okay, this many people are going to go and come and ask for these kind of products, and I can plan things so that I never say no to my customer, right? So that's the experience part of it. That is one example where how data, so how they reinvented. So if you look at it, that coffee company is pretty much now a digital company, right? Now, on the other hand, we work with one of the agriculture OEMs. These are heavy equipment manufacturers. They build these kind of tractors or agricultural equipments, and they have been in this business for more than 50 plus years, right? So they know exactly what kind of accessories they need to sell in which kind of soil. So they know what they have done is they used sensors across the products that they sold. They understood. They have a very good understanding of what kind of soils are there in which kind of places, which kind of locations. They know the weather patterns. They know what kind of fields are normally used by what kind of farmers, and what kind of harvesting is being done there, and all that. And what this all of a sudden realized is, okay, with so much of data that I have, I know exactly what are the downtime, soil conditions, and crop features. What can I do, right? So obviously they improved their product, but then they integrated with local weather companies, and even government wants to know this data. A lot of researchers want to know the data about how the soil patterns are, how the agricultural patterns are. And with that, they just opened it up as an API, and now their revenue in selling that data, right, in exposing that data, is much more than the revenue of building the tractors, right? So you can imagine how they moved. This is a very classic example of digital reinvention, and this is possible because of Internet of Things, with cloud, with all of these pieces, analytics, all of them coming together and exposing yourself through an API. It's like an API economy, right? So I think you guys get the overall picture, and the key idea there is the new business model, the new ecosystem that they have jumped into from a OEM, from a large equipment manufacturer to now a digital company with a new revenue streams, right? Now, what that means is, so this is what we call the digital transformation framework. If you look at it, so if you start redefining your business, right, and if you start integrating with the ecosystem, you move more and more towards reinventing yourself, right? So this is like a tic-tac-toe chart, typical tic-tac-toe chart, and we can assess any client, where do they stop and how do you go towards this, right? Because if you don't go towards that, you might lose the hold on the business, right? So somebody else might just take over from you, right? Now, one of the key aspects of this whole transformation and reinvention is cloud, right? Why there all of a sudden everybody is able to start their own companies. Everybody is able to think beyond what they were. If you look at the acceleration that has happened in the last 5+ years, right? It's amazing, right? So people just dream of it and they're able to do it because thanks to cloud, right? So they're just able to log in, just say, hey, I want this CPU, this RAM, this kind of a workload I'm going to run. They have it available. What used to happen maybe 10 years back is it's not that easy, right? So you'll have to go either buy your own machine or go for an infrastructure provider. The infrastructure provider might give an infrastructure with operating system, and you will have to build all your system. Now we are moving more and more towards what we call the business process as a service. So there are a lot of business processes that are available on the cloud. There are a lot of solutions that are available on the cloud. There are software which is available on the cloud, right? Everybody, SAP, everybody has moved toward that in terms of providing an end-to-end solution on the cloud. And the underlying cloud technology has matured so much, and that is what I will cover in the subsequent few sessions, slides, right? So what is changing, right? So one is the emergence and or convergence of these technologies, right? So now on one side we have cognitive analytics. Running cognitive analytics in olden age, means you have to have a lot of disk space and very good performing computers. And it was not easy to buy such computers. Mobile has become the front end for everything, right? So what mobile is giving you is a very great experience that you can give to your customers. But on the other hand, you also mobile has become like an IoT device for you because it is collecting a lot of information, what we call the click streams, right? How is the user liking this app, and the overall experience that I'm giving to the user. Social media, there is enough data without even breaking any of my privacy. There is enough data about the kind of patterns, the user patterns, the user behavioral patterns I'm able to derive from that. Security obviously has been there and it's matured quite a bit. Internet of Things has matured quite a bit, again, thanks to cloud, because Internet of Things is equal to big data, right? So when you have a sensor, the sensor is streaming data every few seconds. That means you need some place where you can store this streaming data, or you need the compute to analyze the data on the stream and derive insights from that, right? And of course, the cloud is basically bringing all of these things together. From the user perspective, right, the experience perspective, the users are super pampered now, right? So how many of you delete the app if you don't like the app user experience, right? Nobody cares about what features it comes out, but the experience has to be good. Of course, features is important, but there could be a competitor app which has better features than what you have here, but then you'll not go to that because it loads slow, or it doesn't give you that easy experience, right? Ubiquity is, how do I have an uniform experience across devices, across it could be from an iPad to a phone to a mobile, to a desktop PC, to a car interface or anything, right? So, and omni-channel. So it is expected that all the applications have to be omni-channel. And I talked about this, how the value chain has changed from traditional left to right to all the way to the ecosystem. So what does this mean from the cloud technology standpoint? And this is where I switch the gear and move towards the cloud technology. Obviously, we have to build all the applications for scale, right? So there is this saying that when I joined IBM, we were building the systems to last. I don't know if you have heard of it. You could be from the new generation, but the old generation, we used to call it build to last. Now we are building systems to scale and change, right? So we change is like a given, right? So the system might change, the business processes can change, the new policies might come in. I don't know how many users are going to log in at a given point. I should be ready to scale at any point. We are moving more and more towards componentized delivery. So we've started thinking monolith, what we call, right? So a banking system, for example, like if you take Yono itself, right? It is a bunch of componentized applications running together. If you log into Yono, you will see that you'll get a same experience on the screen, but there are multiple components that are working behind it. And all of those components you can scale up individually, scale down individually. Like, for example, I will talk a little bit about how we do componentized delivery a little bit more. There's a detailed slide on each of this. We are moving more and more towards full stack development. Full stack is both vertical and horizontal. What I mean by that is, vertical is I have the knowledge of application layer, and I mean 5 years back I used to call this is a hardware engineer, this is a software engineer. With cloud, it's become a very thin line, right? So people have to understand not just the application layer, they have to also understand the underlying platform layer and the infrastructure layer, maybe to a certain extent, depending upon what kind of application. So that is vertical stack, right? And then horizontally, we are also looking at the programming models where somebody who can do not just the front end, but also the back end. Can I have a full stack engineers who, we used to say front end developer, back end developer. Instead, we have identified technologies and programming languages which work on both sides and provide you that, it's much easier. And I will talk a little bit about, how it will help. AI is like given, right? So AI is given in pretty much every solution I work on. we always have one of the levers is how do I bring in artificial intelligence? How do I do machine learning? How do I learn from these patterns? This has become, I wouldn't say differentiator anymore, right? So it is like a given, it is like the foundation or the backbone of any system that you take right now, right? And the systems have to be built for change. We have to deal with ambiguity. We may not. So in olden days, when I used to do requirements gathering, the way we used to do that is we used to, have a full-fledged Word document which lists down all the requirements. Till I freeze the requirements, I will not even start coding. But now I'm saying, okay, with whatever I know, can I get started? That is the ambiguity. I'm dealing with a lot of ambiguity. I'm building the system so that it can embrace change, right? And thanks to Agile, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And continuous delivery, right? So the delivery is not like, okay, you gave me the requirements, come after 6 months, I'll give you the system. So we are deploying every 2 weeks there is a release that we send, and thanks to again cloud and Agile, all of them coming together. Now let me take each of these things and walk you through how cloud is affecting these, right? So build for scale, what does it mean? Build for scale is I should have the flexibility to scale up and scale out. So scale up is as the I should be able to increase the number of RAM or number of CPU, the size of the RAM and CPU dynamically, depending upon the workloads that are coming up. And scale out is I should be able to add more machines when I need it. And all of this we used to do manually, right? So we used to buy every time there is a Diwali time, right? Most of the retail companies or e-commerce companies, they'll have to bump up their servers, buy more RAM, or if they have reached the threshold already, they will vertically scale, horizontally scale by bringing in more and more machines, right? Now with the cloud, all of this is a click of button and in fact automatic. It is completely automatic, right? So you can set your auto scale policies, saying, this is how I want you to scale. When you reach this threshold, you spin off another cluster of nodes or VMs or containers on a different cloud. And you can also we call it burst out. So burst out is, okay, I already have some capacity on-prem. I will use that on-prem capacity as much as possible. But when I reach a particular threshold, I want to spin off clusters on the cloud and redirect some of the traffic to the cloud, right? Instead of me going and buying more and more machines, right? So these three are, very, very common. In fact, scale up and scale out is very much automatic, and with multi-cloud management that is coming in, even burst out has become very, very common now, right? Some of the technologies I will quickly touch upon is Kubernetes, right? So we are moving more and more towards away from the VMs in developing what we call the container-based applications. The advantage of container-based applications, it scales much faster than VM. It takes less resources than VM, right? And then we are moving more now also augmented with the containers is also the serverless. So wherever I just have to call a transaction and don't have to stare and store anything, or it's more of a stateless kind of a transaction, I would go more and more towards a serverless technology like Knative, for example, the logo that you see here, right? And then there's a lot of hybrid cloud solutions like Anthos, Outposts, IBM Satellite, and all of them, which are enabling you to come up with this ecosystem of you have a private cloud, which is on-prem. You use as much of capacity as you want in the private cloud, or you keep some of the applications which are compliance, which have their own compliance, which you cannot put it on the cloud. You still create a cloud. The reason why we say a cloud is we use technologies like Kubernetes to have that flexibility, the advantages that the cloud brings on-prem with my existing machines that I have in my data center. But then I also expand myself to the public cloud or SaaS solutions for any new systems. Like, for example, all the digital front ends can be hosted onto the public cloud, right? And then I have dedicated cloud model. And then now, more importantly, we are doing a lot of edge cloud. So edge cloud is more in terms of running workloads very close to the shops. For example, if you take the example that I gave for the coffee shop, right? Let's assume that in the coffee shop, there is a lot of sensors. Even the coffee making machines are automated, right? Now, it cannot transmit the data all the way to the cloud because you need a real-time analytics of some of the things, some of the decisions you have to take, right? So there could be workloads which is running on car, for example, or on a manufacturing facility. So those are all called edge cloud, which are running on a microcontroller or a microcomputer, right? And then we have larger models, like for example, Outpost AWS. You can have a full rack which is available on-prem, and that is directly connected to AWS. IBM Satellite again provides you a multi-cloud management layer on top of it, where you can actually run workloads across multiple clouds, including the edge cloud, right? So, and then OpenShift, which is our implementation of Kubernetes, and much more than that, right? So I'll talk a little bit towards the end on what is OpenShift and all that. So these are some of the technologies which are coming together, and each one of them you will need one full hour to talk about. From the componentized delivery standpoint, what we are talking is more towards containerized. The infrastructure has become software defined. So 10 years back, I used to call and say, hey, I need this machine. I need you to provision this machine. And physically, they have to open that machine, maybe set up a LPAR or a VM on top of it and give me access. Now, it's all written in code. So I say, hey, this is the spec, this is the RAM, this is what I want, and submit it to the cloud. It will provision it for you, right? Which means your complete infrastructure is defined by you, and it is dynamically provisioned or unprovisioned depending upon that. Like for example, now we are doing performance testing on the fly. So we don't have a separate system for doing performance testing. We provision it on the fly. We test the performance use cases, test cases, and then we shut it down. And there are a lot of technologies, like Terraform is one of the largest, most widely used, which allows you to write this infrastructure code and provision the overall provision and govern the infrastructure that you have provisioned on the particular cloud, right? And then we are moving more and more towards operators, where the operators specific to Kubernetes, where you can actually not only provision but also manage the particular platform components that you just provision. And then we have Packer, Quay, which is the registry of all the containers that are there, and OpenShift, right? So, but the key point, I mean, while the right side is more for people who are already working in cloud and who already have the sense of cloud, and more for technical crowd, the key thing is the applications are now broken down into containers, and they are deployed as components, and so that you can scale up and scale down. Just to go back to this State Bank of India example, or any bank for that matter, instead of having the whole banking system as one monolith, right? Which means if I have to scale during, let's say, Diwali or something, I have to replicate the whole monolith again and again based on the scalability model that I talked about previously. But instead now, if I have just the internet banking as a component, just the, let's say utility payment as a component, what I can do is, okay, on this particular day, people will use more of internet banking. They may not use utility payments, right? I can scale this down, scale this up. So with that, I'm able to use the platform much better and infrastructure much better, because I have moved more towards pay-as-you-go model, right? So I don't want to run everything every time, right? So I have that flexibility to run whatever functionality I want on a particular day, on a particular time, if the delivery is componentized, right? So, and that is where the microservices architecture also comes in. From the full stack development, like I said, there is application code, there is pipeline as a code. So we also deploy the pipeline. The pipeline is, how do you, when I check in the code, what happens, what kind of testing do I need to do, and where does it go deploy? All that is also code. And how it deploys, before I deploy, what kind of environment I need to create, which is infrastructure code, that is also code now, right? So which means the full stack development is really happening now. People who understand at just the application layer are also now understanding, how do I run this application on, let's say, for example, AWS or IBM Cloud? What kind of services can I use around around that application. So how do I provision this particular database on AWS cloud or IBM cloud or whatever? So that skill is becoming very, very important. And there are various technologies on the right side like Kubernetes, which allows you to do these things much faster, right? You just have to write the code. How do you package the code? How do you deploy the code? Is completely automated with what we call the GitOps, right? As you check in the code gets packaged automatically, tested, and automatically deployed onto the cloud. Go is the language that Go, Node.js are the languages. We are also looking at Graal VM, which is allowing you to make your Java VM much thinner, much faster to run on cloud, because Java traditionally was meant for something else, but then now Java is also competing with likes of Go, right? And Quarkus is again, I have written a blog on this. If you want, you can go to my Medium and read a lot about why Graal VM and the whole Java stack, how it's transformed for cloud, right? And IBM Cloud Pak for application brings all of these pieces together, right, for you to do rapid application development and deployment. Now AI, right? So AI moved beyond simple machine learning, right? We have moved much in I would say in the last 5 years itself. There's a lot of transformation in the way we use AI. It used to be a dream, but now pretty much whatever I want to do is available as an algorithm. It could be a Python module or an R module, which is available. Big data is happening very, very mainly because of cloud, right? Because I don't have to buy so much storage. So we have solutions like IBM Cloud Pak for data, Amazon Redshift, Snowflake, which provide all of this big data and data analytics and AI as a service. So you don't have to buy a lot like IBM Watson, right? So it's available as a service. If you have to run IBM Watson on your own machines, you will have to invest quite a bit, right? So instead, you just call an API, you just ingest the data and call an API, it starts working with you, right? So that is only possible because of cloud, and this is one of the key reasons I was talking about, right? So in the previous section, that this is what has actually fueled the overall transformation, right? And from the continuous delivery, in the interest of time, I'll not go through a lot, but I think all of you would have heard of Agile, DevSecOps, right? So this is given, right? So now it is like a backbone. DevOps is a backbone. It is not a fancy thing anymore, right? So that's the way we are doing development. The squads are integrated. We talk squads, we talk Scrum, we don't talk. This is the development team, this is the operations team, this is the testing team. They are all integrated as an integrated squad. And there are various agile methods. SAFe is one of the most widely used, and of course Scrum is widely used agile way of working. And this is the IBM Garage method. IBM Garage method brings all of these best practices together, and that is what we use quite a bit in IBM for our clients, right? Just a few more minutes I will take in introducing you. Then towards the end, comes for academic, obviously enrolled to that. So has the full gamut of things, more focused on enterprise applications. You will have some specific things which are very very enterprise specific. There are, like, for example, Cloud Pak. Cloud Paks is very special for IBM. I would say re-architected all our products to run on OpenShift, to run on a Kubernetes cluster with a very, very thin, I would say, footprint on a cloud native architecture, and that is our Cloud Paks. There are various Cloud Paks. And then with the Red Hat acquisition, there's a lot more technologies which got added to our overall portfolio, right? And all of these are very, very interesting, and I'm just putting a screenshot of that. You can go and look at it. OpenShift, very quickly, is I don't know how many of you have worked on Kubernetes, right? So Kubernetes is great, just great, right? So it provides whatever I just spoke about. It provides all. I would say that is the best cloud native architectural pattern. But Kubernetes, if you look at the CNCF, it has published, there are at least 10,000 types of frameworks, right? You with a combination of things that you can build, right? If you do yourself with Kubernetes, you have to be really techie and you'll have to manage all of these open sources coming together and working together. What OpenShift provides is an opinionated stack, which is built on Kubernetes and much more than that, right? So it also provides end-to-end application lifecycle management. It is an enterprise-grade implementation of, I would say, Kubernetes, right? And it also seamlessly sits on Azure, AWS, IBM Cloud, right? For a multi-cloud, hybrid multi-cloud kind of an architecture, OpenShift provides you a lot of relief in terms of not worrying about the underlying layer, underlying network, underlying storage. Again, I have a very detailed blog on why OpenShift on my Medium page. Please go there and have a look at it. Like I said, Cloud Pak is our set of Cloud Paks, and this is going to change, right? So we are now consolidating again with the number of Cloud Paks that we have. But we have Cloud Pak for application, which is mainly for building our web applications and mobile applications. Cloud Pak for data, where you do data analytics and AI. Then you have Cloud Pak for integration, which allows you for enterprise integration with backend systems on API economy and stuff like that. Cloud Pak for automation, where you do the BPEL business process workflow and all that. And MCM, Cloud Pak for MCM, which provides the multi-cloud management layer. So with that, I'll stop. I want to give you guys some time back. But one key slide is we have this IBM Academic Initiative, and there is a link which is available here. You can go there, and you have a lot of free courseware, free badges that you can gain. There's a lot of effort IBM has put in exposing a lot of our enterprise, I would say, learning material to academics. So please feel free to go there, check out what is there, and more than happy to help and support. I'm really happy I had this opportunity to present about this. I didn't want this to be a IBM sales pitch, but I just wanted, because in the last session I did, a lot of people came and said, oh, all this is good, but what is IBM doing? So that's the reason why towards the end I added a few IBM slides in terms of how IBM is looking at cloud and how IBM is investing on cloud. While the rest of the stuff is much more generic, right? So with that, I will stop. And are there any questions? I don't know how we're going to take questions. Hello? Are there any questions? I think you can put it on the chat, right? Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. No, question and answer. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for question and answer. Nikita, is she there on the call?